How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age. And I am going to be doing kind of a different format, similar to my spotlights, but in a different way. What I am going to be doing is called the
Lost Heroes of the Golden Age.
That, what the voice said. I'm going to be doing the Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. These are going to be heroes that, well, they may have had some popularity in their time. These were the heroes that came out in the 1940s and inspired people to patriotically support our troops over in World War II. Now, when the war ended, a lot of these superheroes fell out of the popularity. Now, some heroes were able to go on. A number of characters who started in the Golden Age and are still in comic books today are people like Superman, Batman, Captain America, Captain Marvel. But there are a lot of heroes who just aren't remembered afterwards, and that's what makes them the Lost Heroes. Now, the hero that I am going to be reviewing today is
Magno, the Magnetic Man.
Magno. Now, I did mention him when I did my sidekick list. I think I called him Mango. Oh, yeah, I read the name too fast and thought it was something different, which Magno makes a heck of a lot more sense. Now, this is not actually the only Magno. There were two of them. The one we're going to be reviewing is from Ace Periodicals, not to be confused with the one from Quality Comics, who's also a lost hero of the Golden Age. Now, some of these heroes may have appeared through Dynamite Entertainment's Project Superpowers, but that wasn't an attempt to bring back the heroes. So, they still had their popularity in the Golden Age. So, let's go ahead and review Magno, the Magnet Man, for the Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. Magno, the Magnet Man, real name unknown, first appeared in Super Mystery Comics #1 in 1940, published by Ace Periodicals and created by Paul Chadwick. Now, I believe when I did my superhero sidekick list, I called him Mango. I actually didn't look at it right the first time, but it's Magno. Now, Magno, when he appeared in 1940, the term superhero wasn't, well, it hadn't been as widely used as it ever would have been used today. But back then, they would be known as mystery men, men who had powers but not necessarily superheroes. Now, in doing the research, a lot of the sites say that he never wore anything but his costume, which is actually incorrect. In some of his later issues, you can see him actually wearing a suit in conjunction with the costume, but it was only very little. It was kind of a blink and you miss it thing. But let's go over and introduce Magno through the first issue, his first appearance. Now, we don't need to do his sidekick Davy, because Davy, we did that when we introduced Davy on the superhero sidekick list. So let's go ahead and go over the first appearance of Magno. Just an interesting side note here, even though Magno is the featured cover, he is actually not the first story, he's the third story. After this, he would be the featured story all the way until volume 6, where he would get regulated farther into the magazine, and his last cover appearance would be in volume 5. But here we are with this one. Magno the Magnet Man. Seldom has the world seen anything so strange as the powers possessed by Magno, the Magnet Man. Mysterious and mighty, Magno is able to draw to himself anything of metal. In addition, he can hurl himself through space attracted by anything metallic. With such powers, Magno could rule the world. Instead, he chooses to devote his life to fighting evil of all kinds. After we have the excellent intro, there seems to be a jumping around in the first couple of pages. We go from a church to a press room to the police office, and then this is real interesting. It's all over the United States. It's the same thing. All these places are being hit at the same time by the gangs of the Octopus, but it's in New York where they come up against Magno. And Magno gives them a chance to run. He says the police are on the way. They decided to continue with the crime, and then the police and Magno show up at the same time. Now, it's interesting here. Magno says, "I command all alien metal to come to me," which I think is an odd phrase because they don't reference it again, and I don't think that Magno is supposed to be an alien. Although we never do get an origin story as far as I've been able to find out. Now, he takes all their guns, and then they are handcuffed and the police take them away. Later on, in the police precinct, they're having a discussion, and they bring in what they said is the outstanding criminologist of the world. And his name is, his last name is that Beagle? B-E-A-L-E? Well, they're discussing it, and they're trying to know whether Magno is a friend of the police or masquerading as helping the cops but working for the Octopus. And then his face appears on a metallic lamp above the table, which is something I've never been able to understand. He can project his face onto metal. I'm still not quite sure how that works. Well, they all get on top of a gigantic building, and they see an armored truck being robbed below, so Magno uses his power to bring the truck onto the top of the building terrace, which is gotta be the most inconvenient thing in the world, because now the truck is stuck on the terrace. I don't know. Magno shows that he's a force for good. They take the crooks in, and he grabs one of the members of the gang to try to get him to squeal, much in the same way that Batman would. You know, he drops him from a high height and catches him, and he's like, okay, I'll turn on him, and he goes back to where the gang all meets, which is actually great. The Octopus isn't there. He actually talks to them through some sort of radio device. So Magno hides out there. He sees that the Octopus is talking to them, but the Octopus also reveals that Magno is there. I mean, how does he know? I don't know. So Magno, knowing that the jig is up, decides to run downstairs where he finds a chemical room, and he throws chemicals at them, making a smoke bomb, and is able to get away. Later, we see him at, I suspect it's his home. It doesn't really say anything. But then Mr. Radio Exposition comes on and moves the plot along by telling Magno exactly where he knows he needs to go to stop the criminals. They said something about a lot of gold being brought into the country, and they even say when and where it's coming in. I mean, that's very, very specific. So, let's see. So, Magno runs out of the apartment so he could try and go, I guess, to the shipyards and runs into a cop who tells him that a Zeppelin is missing, or a blimp, if you don't know what a Zeppelin is. And he even mentions where it was taken from, so this leads Magno to where he has to go next. So he attracts himself to the metal at, let's see, Randy's Safe Flights, and is able to talk to Randy, and he tells them, let's see, are you Randy, the man with the lost blimp? Golly bee, what's this, another spook? I am, and if my plane was in shape, I'd sure catch them, even if they did head over for open seas. You say they went out to sea? And that leads him to the boat that he heard on the radio. He gets there and he finds out that the gold that was on the ship has been absconded with. So he attracts himself to the blimp by the way of they've got one of those little compartments that you ride in under the blimp. He's able to attract himself to that. So he gets into the blimp, he beats up all the bad guys, and then he catches up to the octopus, who jumps out of the plane to escape. And one of the octopus men actually takes a shot at him, saying, come back here, you. I ain't going to face these raps alone. And the octopus reveals that he's wearing a bulletproof suit. He knocks out the gunman and attracts the octopus back into the blimp, knocks him out, and we reveal that he is Professor Beale. It's B-E-A-L-E, Beale. And this was the criminologist cops were using. And I guess we figure out that since he knows the criminal element so well, he knows how to work around it. Now, the octopus almost gets hit from behind. He knocks out the guy instantly. Beale runs to the exit and tries to grab the parachute, but he misses, and he falls to his death. The bad guys are all torn up. Magno flies puts the blimp on autopilot to go back to safety, and he communicates with the police through a metallic clock on the wall. And tells them about the blimp, and then he leaves the blimp flying in the air. In the next issue, Super Mystery Comics, you'll enjoy new thrills and adventures with Magno, the Magnetic Man. Well, that covers his first appearance. There's some really weird things about this. I don't know how he's making his face appear on metal. That one was weird. But overall, he's an interesting superhero. Now let's go over some of the stuff that has happened over the years. I'll go over a little bit of an explanation where he came from and where he ended up going. Now, as I said, Magno would appear in all the volumes of Super Mystery Comics all the way up to Volume 6, where he would appear in the first 4 issues. And that's when he would stop appearing, and this was around 1947. And that was the time that people started losing the interest in superheroes. I don't actually know what the decline of the superhero era was, but I know that it was felt by all the comic books, and unless you had some deep pockets or was bought by a company with deep pockets, you wouldn't go on. Things like the DC comic books with Superman and Batman were able to go on because DC was so high and so popular. And I know DC bought a number of the rights to a number of superheroes like the Quality Comics and Fawcett Comics. But yeah, 1947, the decline of superheroes would be around until their resurgence in 1960, where they really hadn't dipped too much since then. In the 90s they would dip, but they'd come back. That's relevant. We're talking about Magno. Now, Magno would also appear in these, 4 favorites. And 4 favorites had a number of different heroes that would appear in it. Magno and Davey were definitely the premieres. They would appear in the first 26 issues, and early on, they would share the cover with other heroes, and somebody different might start each issue. But by the time that they came to the end of their run in 4 favorites, Magno and Davy pretty much, ruled the comic. In the very first issue, you had the Raven, the Lightning, Vulcan, and Magno and Davy. And about this time, Jim Mooney had actually taken over the duties of drawing many of these heroes. Now, if you've watched my lawsuit videos, you'll recognize the name Jim Mooney with the Lynx, the first few issues of the Lynx. Now, Jim Mooney's artwork shows through very well here with the way the characters hold themselves, the action, the way they speak. It's very reminiscent of the way he does the work, which is why DC Comic Books would pick him up later for Batman. Now, one of the most interesting things is Magno's costume changes over the years. In the first issue, it looked like he had a pole on his chest with bright lights on the north and south side, which is supposed to represent north and south magnets. As the years go by, it seemed to just totally divert from that, and in the very last issues in Volume 6, it looked like a line down the middle with 2 protruding lines on the side. It looked like a very irregular eye. It didn't even look like the way it looked in the very beginning. Now, Magnus Powers is weird. He has the ability to project his face on anything metal and be able to communicate from vast distances doing it that way. He has the ability to attract metal to him and fly large distances by attracting himself to the metal inside other objects. He also appears to be invulnerable. Now, the power that Magno possesses is just... I don't even know what his upper threshold is. In one issue where an earthquake was caused, he's able to take 2 skyscrapers and return them to the foundation using his magnetic power, saying that will hold until they can repair the structures. He lifts, well, they weren't falling over, they were tilting, and he makes the skyscrapers perfectly erect again. In another issue, he actually lifts a submarine out of the water, dumps it upside down to get the seamen out because they were criminals, and then kind of throws the sub back into the water again. I don't really know where the upper echelon of his powers were. Now, the most confusing thing about this is his partner Davy shared the same powers as Magno, but only when Magno granted him the powers. Davy had a suit that looked very much like Magno's, because he even said, "My suit looks like yours," when they first met. He's able to give him the power of magnetism, but there seemed to be a time limit on how much he could use, which is also just a weird thing. Now, I don't think he had any love interests. I know that he looked like the playboy type, so there are probably many women that did fancy him. But I don't think that they reviewed any storyline of him, having an attraction to a particular female. He had such villains as the Cobra and the Black Puma, but the one that seemed to appear the most was the Clown. And the Clown, he's a clown. He dressed up in a clown costume, he wore a mask, he did things that were very clown-like, and he was very much an arch-villain. Now, Magno did have a few appearances in Project Superpowers. He wasn't the main focal point. He didn't have any speaking lines. He was just part of a couple of pages of the collection of heroes. And it looks like Davy appeared with him one time as well. He was just more of so they can include as many superheroes as possible, which is one of the reasons I think Project Superpowers was just a fun read. Well, I hope you like the lost hero of the Golden Age.
Magno, the Magnetic Man.
That's gonna have to stop. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this, the lost heroes of the Golden Age. If there are any heroes that are lost that you would like me to see, and remember, lost is a very specific criteria. It's heroes that appeared in the Golden Age that don't appear in comic books today, Project Superpowers notwithstanding, which is actually a great read. So if there's any lost superheroes that you'd like to see, you can let me know, and we'll add them to the program. So until next time, I'll be seeing you.